tonight on First at 9, this Wednesday, the 19th of June 2024. Way forward. MOUs with bilateral creditors are near completion, says President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Sri Lanka to extend debt repayment deadlines until 2042. Tax and salary hike. Parliament debates the proposed imputed rental income tax under the IMF loan facility program. Committee report on CBSL salary hike submitted to the Committee on Public Finance, reveals Chairman Dr. Harsha De Silva. New leadership. Sri Lanka Freedom Party's Executive Committee elects Minister Nimal Siripala De Silva as the party's new chairman. Duminda Disanayake to the General Secretary post. Another pandemic. Japan on alert as over 1,000 people contract a fatal bacterial infection. No threat to Sri Lanka, health officials assure.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is Derana First at 9 with Ndivari Amuata. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a very warm welcome. You're joining us tonight once again on First at 9, your prime-time English news service here at Derana 24. We start off with your top stories making headlines tonight. President Ranil Wickremesinghe unveiled plans to establish a new development bank aimed at providing financial support to Sri Lankan industrialists, enabling them to obtain loans at low interest rates. Addressing an event today, the head of state noted that an economic commission will alone be established to oversee the initiatives and added that a new entity named Enterprise Sri Lanka will also be established to empower small and medium enterprises of Sri Lanka. President Wickremesinghe highlighted that the government is close to reaching agreements with Sri Lanka's creditor nations, making an important milestone in the country's bid to emerge out of bankruptcy.
The opening ceremony of the International Industry Exhibition, Industry Expo 2024, was held today under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe. The expo, which features 1,307 exhibition booths, saw the participation of over 1,000 international industrial entrepreneurs from various countries.
Within
the next few weeks, we expect to reach agreements with our creditor nations with the aim of emerging out of bankruptcy. After that, we will reach agreements with private creditors, which is a much simpler process. Yet, we cannot be complacent. Our focus must now be to extend debt repayment deadlines, ideally until 2042. The country's manufacturing sector must become export-oriented. Our primary objective is to ensure that our industries are competitive in international markets. That cannot be achieved overnight. Even neighboring India has made significant strides in industrial development. It is pivotal that we reach that level. However, we need funds for these initiatives. We are currently exploring the possibility of establishing a development bank to facilitate the funds required for this initiative. Secondly, we have to maintain low interest rates. Additionally, an economic commission will also be instituted to advance these initiatives. Furthermore, we plan to introduce a new entity called Enterprise Sri Lanka to support small and medium-scale entrepreneurs. We will bring in experts from abroad if necessary. We need to move forward on these new paths. We intend to present the economic transformation bill to Parliament to reinforce these initiatives.
Less sugar, same great taste. From Melbourne.
While Parliament was debating the proposed imputed rental income tax, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa accused the government of acting like a puppet by imposing each and every condition proposed by the International Monetary Fund. However, State Minister of Foreign Affairs Taraka Balasurya, who highlighted that Sri Lankans are reluctant to pay taxes, is of the view that the imputed rental income tax is a fair tax move. Meanwhile, parliamentarian of the Samagi Janabalavega and chairman of the Committee on Public Finance, Dr. Harsha De Silva, revealed that his committee received the independent committee report on the central bank employee salary hike. Dr. De Silva said the committee is of the view that the central bank should not have implemented a salary hike without taking the country's situation into account.
මේ රජය දීපල බද්දක් ගහන්නට යනවා කියන එක
It is well known that the government is planning to impose an imputed rental income tax. It is said that this tax is being introduced as per the conditions of the IMF because the government has failed to meet the revenue targets. We accept that the government should work with the IMF to resurrect the country. However, prior to reaching an agreement, the government should first discuss it with the people. We do not need a government that acts like a puppet.
කියන පදයට නටන රූකඩ රජයක් අපිට වැඩක් නැහැනේ. ඒ දීපල බද්ද එක ගේකට සීමා කරලා නැහැ. සියලු ගෙවල් වලට අය කරන්න පුළුවන් කියලා තමයි IMF agreement එක කියන්නේ.
ඊයේ ජනාධිපතිතුමා
හරි එහෙම කිව්වා.
ඇමතිවරයා හැටියට පැහැදිලි ප්‍රකාශයක් කරා. ඒක
පොඩ්ඩක් එහෙම කිව්වා. හැබැයි ජනාධිපතිතුමාට ඇවිල්ලා කිව්වේ IMF agreement එකේ ස්පිල්ල පාබිල්ලක් වෙනස් කරන්න බෑ කියලා.
ඒකත් එතුමාගෙන් ඊයේ අහගන්න.
එතුමාට කිව්වේ.
I don't think the wealth tax is the most appropriate mechanism in trying to tax the people. But why is a wealth tax needed? We know that there is wealth being created. When we look around the country, we see that new houses, new buildings and new institutions being put up daily. But when we really look at the tax income and when we have an analysis to see whether the people are paying taxes for these, we see that the people are not paying taxes. So if you are, for example, if you are building a 30 million or 40 million house, then you should have paid taxes at some time in your life or the other. But unfortunately in Sri Lanka, we have built a culture of not paying taxes. So I think a wealth tax is indeed needed, and I think it's a very fair tax because the person, the first house or the house which you are living will not be taxed, but the other houses will be taxed.
The controversial salary hike of the central bank was one of the topics that was discussed both within and outside this house. The Committee on Public Finance recommended that the President appoint an independent committee and inquire about the reasons behind the salary hike. The report of the independent committee was tabled in the Committee on Public Finance. The report says that both high and low-level employees of the central bank have reached a collective agreement that the salary hike was wrong. Management assistant staff and office assistant staff employees fall under the administrative service. The report stated that being employees of the central bank does not mean they are entitled to a salary hike. With regard to the Employees Provident Fund, there was a controversy about central bank employees receiving a higher EPF compared to other employees. The committee report says that such a measure should not have been implemented and urges the CBSL to rectify it. The committee says that the central bank could have considered the prevailing situation in the country at the time of this decision. I request that the Speaker forward this report to the Minister of Finance and take necessary steps.
ඔබතුමා කරුණා කරලා මේක මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශයට යවලා අවශ්‍ය වැඩ කටයුතු සඳහා මේක යොමු කරන්න කියලා ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා.
මේ වාර්තාව අනුව ඇත්ත වශයෙන්ම මහා බැංකු නිලධාරී ඉල්ලාස් වෙන්න ඕන. අර මේ මහා බැංකුවේ independence.
We allow the central bank to operate independently to prevent political interference in its authority and limit its ability to print money. However, using that independence, they increase their salaries. When all of these things were happening, why did the government act like a puppet?
මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශය විසින් ආයෝජන ප්‍රවර්ධන අමාත්‍යාංශය
The target set by the Ministry of Finance for the Ministry of Investment Promotion is to attract $1 billion this year. During the first quarter of this year, we signed agreements for 35 projects. With these projects, we were able to achieve the target during the first quarter. We are hopeful that we will be able to triple the target within the next few months. We do not believe that these achievements are due to our performances. However, investors have gained confidence in the country, and that confidence will lead them to make more investments.
එම විශ්වාසයක් ඇති වෙලා තියෙන නිසා ඒ ඇවිල්ලා කිවිසුම් ගත වෙනවා.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
Japan has seen an increase in the cases of a fatal bacterial infection which is said to cause deaths in as little as 48 hours after infection. Known as streptococcal toxic shock syndrome, the condition is reported to have a mortality rate of over 30%. Despite the rapid spread of the disease in Japan, the epidemiology unit of the Ministry of Health says that the disease does not pose a threat to Sri Lanka.
Japan has recently seen an increase in the number of cases of a fatal bacterial infection. Known as streptococcal toxic shock syndrome, the condition is primarily caused by group A Streptococcus bacteria. According to the Japanese National Institute of Infectious Diseases, a total of 1,019 cases of the condition have been reported in Japan as of the 9th of June, surpassing the entire count of 941 cases for the whole of last year. The infection is primarily transmitted through droplets from nasal or throat mucosa mucosa and through contact with wounds. Initial symptoms of the disease typically include a sore throat, fever, loss of appetite, diarrhea, vomiting and other gastrointestinal issues, as well as septic symptoms such as low blood pressure. Initial symptoms of the disease typically include a sore throat, fever, loss of appetite, diarrhea, vomiting and other gastrointestinal issues, as well as septic symptoms such as low blood pressure. If not treated promptly, it can lead to multi-organ failure with a mortality rate exceeding 30%. Experts caution that the early symptoms of the condition are often mistaken for the common cold, and that those experiencing symptoms such as high fever accompanied by delirium or rapidly spreading redness around a wound must seek immediate medical attention, as it can take as little as 48 hours from the time of infection to the death of the patient. Despite the rapid spread of the infection in Japan, the epidemiology unit of the Ministry of Health states that the disease does not pose an immediate threat to Sri Lanka.
This
is a common bacterial infection. In rare cases, this infection may develop into the fatal condition known as Streptococcus shock syndrome. There has been an increase in the number of cases of this complication in Japan. This condition can be treated with antibiotics. However, there are strains of Streptococcus that are resistant to antibiotics. There is no reason to have an undue fear about a large-scale spread of this disease or about it affecting Sri Lanka.
Taking you to the weather update, the Marine Forecasting Division of the Department of Meteorology requests the naval and fishing communities to remain vigilant as strong winds of between 50 to 60 kilometers per hour are expected to persist during the coming days. Prompted by the strong gusty winds which are anticipated to escalate, the Met Department highlighted that the seas can be very rough at certain times. In addition, the Meteorological Department forecasts fairly heavy rains of above 75 millimeters to certain parts of the country during the day tomorrow. Accordingly, heavy downpours are anticipated in parts of the western, Sabaragamuwa and northwestern provinces, as well as in the Kandy, Nuwara, Galle and Mathura districts. Meanwhile, the latest reports issued by the Disaster Management Centre revealed that 963 people belonging to 438 families remain affected due to the adverse weather. The Supreme Court today ordered that the fundamental rights petition filed against the appointment of Deshabandhu Tennakoon as the Inspector General of Police to be taken up for consideration on the 8th of July. A three-member bench issued the order after consideration of the High Court petition, but put forward by parties including the Archbishop of Colombo, Cardinal Malcolm Ranjith, Professor Savitri Gunasekara, former MP Hirunika Premachandra and several others. The petitioners claim that Tennakoon failed to carry out his duty as the Senior Deputy Inspector General of Police of the Western Province during the Easter Sunday attacks in 2019 and during an alleged premeditated attack on the protest site on the Golface Green back in 2022. Welcome back. On the political front tonight, Minister Nimal Siripala de Silva has been unanimously elected as the Sri Lanka Freedom Party's chairman, while Duminda Dissanayake has been appointed as the party's new General Secretary. The appointments were made during the SLFP Executive Committee meeting held at the party headquarters in Colombo today.
Minister Nimal Siripala de Silva's faction of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party called an executive committee meeting at the party headquarters today. However, a group of SLFP members, including Hector Bethmage, an electorate organizer of the party, filed a case before the Colombo District Court requesting an order preventing the meeting from being held. When the relevant case was taken up before Colombo Additional District Judge Chamari Veerasurya, President's Counsel Maitri Gunaratne, who appeared on behalf of the plaintiff, said that the Sri Lanka Freedom Party's constitution does not mention Commissioner designation called Acting Chairman, highlighting that the Executive Committee meeting called by Acting Chairman Nimal Siripala de Silva violated the party constitution. President's Counsel Gunaratne requested that the court issue an enjoining order preventing the meeting from being held today. However, presenting his submission before the court, Attorney at Law for the SLFP Acting Chairman Pulasti Rupasinghe said that the court has already issued necessary orders enabling Minister Nimal Siripala de Silva to fulfill his duties as the party's acting chairman. Following the consideration of the facts, Additional District Judge Chamari Veerasurya refused to issue an order preventing the meeting from being held today. However, the court, which ordered that notices be issued to the defendants, decided that the case would be called again on the 3rd of July. Meanwhile, the Executive Committee meeting commenced at around 3 p.m. today at the Sri Lanka Freedom Party headquarters. During the meeting, SLFP Acting Chairman Minister Nimal Siripala de Silva was unanimously elected as the party's new chairman and Duminda Disanayake was appointed as the SLFP's new General Secretary.
පාර්ශව දෙකක් එක පාර්ශවයයි. හරි ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ දාස් පක්ෂයේ තියෙන්නේ මෙතන. ඒක තමයි අධිකරණයක් පිළිඅරගෙන තියෙන්නේ.
අත එක මීටර විතරක් නෙමෙයි අත හරිය අතටත් තියෙනවා.
වැඩ බලන සභාපතිවරයෙක් හෝ වැඩ බලන ලේකම්වරයෙක් ඉන්නවට වැඩිය හොඳයි ස්ථිරව ඉන්න එක. දැන් එතකොට දැන් සම්පූර්ණ ප්‍රශ්න ඉවරයි. මෙතෙක් කලක් තිබුණා යම් ගැටලුවක් කාට හරි. අද ඉන් පස්සේ ඒ ගැටලු ඉවරයි.
ඒක සභාපති මෛත්‍රීපාල සිරිසේන මහතා චෝදනා කරනවා. ඔබතුමාලා රාජ්‍ය අනුග්‍රහයට දෙන ගානට හේතු කරනද?
එතුමා දැන් මේ අපේ පක්ෂ කවුරුවත් නෙවෙයි තනතුරක නැහැනේ. දැන් එතුමා කියන දේ ගැන ගණන් ගන්න දෙයක්වත් නැහැ. දැන් වික්කෙක් මිනිහත් අමාරුයි ගත්ත මිනිහත් අමාරුයි.
Meanwhile, Deputy Secretary of the United National Party, Akila Viraj Karyavasam, affirms that Ranil Wickremesinghe will be contesting the presidential election and claims that President Wickremesinghe has already surveyed the potential results of the election. With that, here's a look at some views expressed by members of both political and independent parties.
Some of the politicians who left us said Ranil Wickremesinghe will not contest in the election if he feels like he is unable to win. Now he is contesting now. He has already assessed the result through surveys. He has assessed the number of votes that he will receive from the Muslim and Tamil communities, which account for 32% of our population. He has also assessed the number of votes that he will be receiving from the 6.9 million voters belonging to the SLPP. He is also planning on how to claim the 2.2 million votes that the UNP failed to garner. Ranil Wickremesinghe is contesting the election because he knows that he can definitely claim victory.
තනතුරේ සිටින ජනාධිපතිවරයෙක් ලෝකෙ කිසිම රටක ඡන්දයක් ඉල්ලලා තුන්වෙනියගෙන් පල්ලෙහාට ගිහිල්ලා නැහැ. ස්ථිරයි සහතිකයි අනිවාර්ය ජනාධිපති සජිත් ප්‍රේමදාස දැන් ලියලා තියාගන්න මෙතන.
රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ ජනාධිපතිවරයා උත්සාහ කරනවා.
While claiming that he is the best person to rebuild the economy, Ranil Wickremesinghe is trying to extend his term without holding an election until 2048. Sajith is trying to convey a certain message. However, it is difficult to understand because he is constantly switching between different languages from time to time.
When the country's economy collapsed, Sajith Premadasa was invited to take over the responsibility. However, he ran away. Anurukumara Disanayake too did the same. It is clear that there is no other alternative to this country than Ranil Wickremesinghe. We will definitely claim the election victory.
එතෙක්කල් වර්තමාන ජනාධිපතිතුමාට සහයෝගය දක්වමින් තමයි කඩාගෙන වැටිච්ච රට ගොඩ ගන්න අපි කටයුතු කරේ. අද ඒක රටට ප්‍රතිඵල එකතු කරලා තියෙනවා.
ඒ කියන්නේ ඉදිරියටත් සහාය දුන්නොත් තමයි රට ගොඩ ගන්න පුළුවන් කියලානේ ඔබතුමා ඔය නොකිය කියන්නේ.
ඔව් පැහැදිලිවම ඉතින් එතන වැරද්දක් වෙලා නැහැ.
The Committee on Public Enterprises today heard that 19 officials in charge of issuing tickets to vehicles passing the Atharugiriya interchange of the Southern Expressway have engaged in fraudulent activities, causing losses to the Road Development Authority. Taking this situation into account, Secretary to the Ministry of Transport and Highways Ranjit Rupasinghe told the committee that steps will be taken to introduce electronic systems for the total booths available at expressway interchanges.
During the inspection of 16 minutes of CCTV footage captured on the 22nd of January 2024, it was found that only 4 tickets that were printed via the toll system were issued to 23 vehicles. On the same day, between 11:30 am and 2:30 pm, it was observed that the cashier had failed to print 37 tickets, each worth 19,500 rupees.
සභාපතිතුමනි ඇත්තටම ඔය ප්‍රශ්නය අපි අඳුනාගෙන තියෙනවා. අතුරුගිරියේ මේ වෙනකොට 19 දෙනෙක් අඳුනාගෙන තියෙනවා. ඒ අයට ඉන්ක්වයරි කරනවා මේ වෙනකොට වංචාවල් සිදු කරලා. CCTV ඕෆ් කරලා තමයි මේ වංචාව කරන්නේ. ඒකට මග තියෙන මේකට එන පවර් කනෙක්ෂන් එක කපනවා. හදිස්සියම මේ 19 දෙනා අපිට ඉවත් කරන්න වෙලා තියෙනවා. නමුත් ඉවත් කරන්න තාම බැරි වුණා. ඒ වුණාට රීප්ලේස්මන්ට් දෙන්න බැරි නිසා.
වංචා කරපු නිලධාරීන් හඳුනාගත්ත පස්සේ තවදුරටත් රාජ්‍ය ටීවී තියාගන්න පුළුවන්.
අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා මේකට තියෙන
We believe that embracing an electronic mechanism is the only solution available. I took the necessary steps and it is currently in the tender calling stage. We hope that we will be able to complete this within 6 months.
උපරිම මාස 6ක් ඇතුළත අපිට මේක කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි කියලා.
අයකැමි තනතුරේ ඉන්න සියලු
We issued an order for the cashiers to be removed from their offices and be stationed at counters. Introduce a card system for this. However, do not cause injustice to newly recruited employees.
The Financial Intelligence Unit of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption, to exchange information related to investigations and prosecutions of financial crimes. The MOU between the Bribery Commission and the Financial Intelligence Unit is expected to enable both institutions to exchange information which is vital for the prevention, detection and prosecution of money laundering, bribery, corruption and other related offences. In another development, the Financial Intelligence Unit signed another MOU with the Financial Intelligence National Centre of the Kingdom of Bahrain at the 30th preliminary of the Egmont Group held in Paris in France. Through the agreement, both parties plan to exchange financial intelligence related to money laundering and associated offences as well as terrorist financing offences. With the signing of the MOUs, the Sri Lanka Financial Intelligence Unit has entered into agreements with 45 foreign counterparts, with 13 MOUs signed with domestic government agencies including Sri Lanka Customs, the Department of Immigration and the Inland Revenue Department. Taking you to the Colombo Stock Exchange, the Bourse closed in red today as a result of price losses in counters such as Sampath Bank, Melster Corp and Richard Pearce & Company, with turnover crossing 2.7 billion rupees. The all-share price index settled 0.28% lower at 12,225. Similar behaviour was witnessed from the S&P SL20, with the index edging 4.7% lower. Trading volume on the index rose 150.5 million shares. Consumer durables and apparel sector was the top contributor to turnover, while foreign investors were net sellers of 1.31 billion rupees during today's trading session. Up next, we have Minal Wickremagey from Capital Alliance with some thoughts on the current status of the economy.
Sri Lanka's GDP grew by 5.3% in Q1 2024, driven by all three major economic activities. Agriculture grew by 1.1%, industry by 11.8%, and services by 2.6%. Additionally, taxes less subsidies on products increased by 10%. From January to April 2024, tea production registered an year-on-year decrease due to unfavorable weather conditions, particularly in March and early April. Rubber production remained lower compared to the same period in the previous year, although it has been gaining pace since late 2023. The Index of Industrial Production, or the IIP, in April 2024 increased by 10.3% to 88.3 compared to April 2023. Total outstanding market liquidity was a surplus of 123.9 billion by June 14, 2024, compared to a surplus of 130.5 billion LKR by the end of the previous week.
Before we end tonight, a quick look at international affairs. Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un signed a new partnership vowing mutual aid if either country faces aggression. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Good night.